This is the story of anger that sets the world on fire. The story of resentment exploited for political gain.
Social media is the perfect tool for a populist movement leader to be able to truly push people into believing more and more extreme messages.
For journalists, the problem isn't the damn gypsy, but the Minister of the Interior. But I give you my word, we will raise their squat.
To digital age nationalists, rage is incremental. They point out new enemies to the people. Politicians, journalists, minorities, foreigners.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
That arsehole mayor makes a dumb decree and confines people to their homes. If I were armed, I'd take to the streets.
In the shadow of demagogues, covert advisors adjust their algorithms, subvert consciousnesses. They're computer scientists, opinion pollsters, experts in big data. They are the engineers of today's chaos.
An engineer of chaos is someone who has imported the logic of platforms into politics. He will seek out and exploit the pockets of anger in society.
Nowadays, social media, we can run a sentiment analysis on real time. That's the real big thing. This is a typical case of manipulation.
France and Germany haven't yet yielded, but the nationalist wave has swept over other great democracies. The United States, Italy, Brazil. It was in this global laboratory that we investigated. To better target our emotions, these engineers of chaos seize hold of our personal data. They infiltrate our social networks.
All of these people use the hashtag abortion on Instagram. I can extract their full name, their phone, their email, their date of birth, their gender.
WhatsApp is the ideal channel for disinformation because it's encrypted. In reality, it's like the perfect crime.
Of our glorious republic, all of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen.
Uso o público LGBT
che le opere d'arte possono essere irriverenti.
No society is safe. No democracy. Not even yours.
You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong.
I take my orders from President Trump, and if he does say that it's time to take to the streets, then we will take to the streets.
And we're going to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
Trump was tweeting out, "I'll see you on the 6th." It was all over Twitter. Then everybody decided to come.
On January 6, 2021, Scott McKenzie crossed America to support Donald Trump. Like Trump, he's convinced that Joe Biden stole the presidential election.
At the very end of his speech, President Trump said, "Let's march down to the Capitol building." But when we got to the Capitol building, the scene was fairly chaotic.
You want to fight? You better believe the Capitol!
Scott did not take part in the attack on the Capitol. Though he condemns the violence, is to accuse the opposite camp, the left wing, of plotting against Donald Trump.
I do believe that it was the Antifa that planned the Capitol attack. Many people don't believe me because they're believing the media. The media is spinning it that the MAGA movement caused all that.
All the evidence says otherwise. But in the Trumpist ranks, mainstream media have not been trusted for years. The ex-president's accusations have undermined their credibility.
Populism sort of goes through a series of stages. You create an enemy. That's the first step. Donald Trump's central enemy after he became president was the mainstream press, and he waged all-out war on the mainstream press in the United States.
I want you to know that the movement we started is only just beginning.
The mainstream media and the people that own them and want to control the world, the globalists, have a mission to bring the entire global population under a single ideological narrative, and that is the narrative of the left, and that socialism is a good thing, that globalism is a good thing, that United Nations is a good thing.
The American people do not believe the corrupt fake news media to become the enemy of the people. Fake, disgusting news.
The term fake news is not used by Donald Trump ever prior to his election as president. It's not used once. Literally within weeks of being elected, he turned on the very media apparatus that helped him win. Populists don't want them to question their ideas at all. Donald Trump used the term fake news to refer to any kind of journalism he didn't like. At that point, he became the most trusted source of information for his followers.
When I started believing in Trump, I saw that the only way to get really good information about him or from him was through Twitter.
Over the course of Donald Trump's presidency, he increased the frequency with which he was tweeting. Many days he would exceed 100 tweets in a 24-hour period. In the case of Twitter, it has structural biases in favor of simplicity, impulsivity, and incivility. Simplicity, because of its 280-character limitation, there's a structural barrier that prevents someone from saying something complex or sophisticated on Twitter.
He can tell me directly what he's saying. I can read it, or I can watch a video that he posts, and I've got it straight from his mouth.
2, impulsivity, because an individual can really tweet from anywhere at any time, all hours of the day. And so sort of it's a very emotional medium. And Trump frequently uses emotive words to elicit anger or hate. After he made the very simple attack, he would insert the word sad with an exclamation point. He names for his followers the exact emotion he wants them to have. And then it's also a bias toward incivility. We know that negative emotions, for instance, travel faster and further on the platform of Twitter.
Most of what Trump said on Twitter would never have made it through the mainstream media filter. Never. I think they did not want, they hated the fact that Trump was speaking direct to the people.
In Trump's America, the engineer of chaos was the president himself. But most of the time, the prince is prompted by a hidden advisor, both an expert in algorithms and a master of emotions.
Iscriviti subito.
Sign up right away. The sooner you like my Facebook page, the more points you'll earn.
E addirittura per i più.
And the lucky ones will win a call with me.
Chiacchierata al telefono con me.
Addressing the people directly, a skill in which the leader of the Italian right wing is a master.
Facebook is
the most popular social network, the most people-oriented. I know very well that my video, my message, can reach millions of people. From memory, I must have, what, 4 million followers on Facebook?
His Facebook account is the most followed of all European politicians. In less than 10 years, Matteo Salvini has turned his party, the League, into the country's most popular political group. One man is behind this success. He's very discreet, often seen in photos with his back to camera or in the background. Shadowy advisor Luca Morisi. He methodically turned social networks into Matteo Salvini's megaphone.
The first remarkable thing Morisi did after meeting Salvini was to tell him, don't go on Twitter. It's the network of professionals. The people are on Facebook. Put everything into Facebook. That was Morisi's intuition. When they met, Salvini had only 18,000 followers on Facebook. A far cry from today's Salvini, with millions of Facebook fans.
I met Luca Morisi on Facebook. I liked him because he was a genius. He is a genius. And he dealt with themes that were beyond me. Philosophy of communication. He had a very modern vision. You either think he's mad, or you give him a job. I chose the second option.
Luca Morisi didn't respond to our requests for interviews. He never does. He only appears publicly at rare private conferences reserved for his peers.
Morisi understood through his use of social networks that this was no longer a time to be moderate. He saw this was a time to be radical.
There is a big dichotomy here, with them on one side, us on the other. This polarization logic works very well in general, especially for our communication. And of course, attacking enemies always works very well.
This strategy, applied to the letter, led to his first major victory. In 2018, Matteo Salvini became Deputy Prime Minister after a digital crusade. And always the same message, repeated, hammered home.
For illegal immigrants, the good life is over. Pack your bags. You see, friends, they want more money. Instead of saying thank you, they want more money. Is that normal? They arrive in Verona and want to watch football on Sky. They want to eat and be left alone. And who pays? We do. You do. Of course, communication on social networks is freer, more immediate, less filtered, for good and for bad. If we hadn't been able to communicate directly with all these millions of people, it would have been more difficult.
Matteo Salvini and Luca Morisi met in 2013.
Thanks, guys.
At the time, Salvini was a separatist, and his enemy were southern Italians. whom he calls yokels. He and his comrades in his regionalist party, the Northern League, would badmouth them constantly. Under the influence of Luca Morisi, the party had ambitions on a national scale. To reach all Italians, they needed a new target. An external enemy, illegal immigrants.
I define this change as the work of two small chemists in a laboratory, Salvini and Morisi. The social networks make it possible to test messages on a day-to-day basis. And Morisi would often say, I like my job because the next day I see the results of the things I do, the themes that I suggest. And they discover quite simply that these themes, immigrants, black people, are transversal themes. Morisi explained this concept to me. They realized that these subjects managed to break through in the South.
And by exploring the bowels of social networks, Salvini and Morisi were able to choose their new enemy. A technique well known to digital marketing specialists, sentiment analysis.
Sentiment analysis, that's really a game changer in terms of political communication. With public polls, when you start your survey to when you get the result, I mean, sometimes you need to wait a couple of days. And sometimes in politics, simply waiting a couple of days is simply too much. Now, imagine that you want to understand a given social media, such as Twitter or Facebook, whatever, of the Italian people nowadays, what they think about migration. They discuss about in a positive or in a negative way. So what you have to do? Well, you have to identify some keywords. For example, migrants, for sure. Immigration, that's another thing. But not only those words. For example, we know that some people in Italy, when they discuss about migrants, for example, they use the word negri. So you also add that to the keyword. Imagine that you have collected 1 million of text. You have a huge amount of information that actually you can play with. So how you do? You just see what people are discussing, you see the sentiment of that topic, and you write that.
Le persone a bordo di questa automobile gridano Salvini, Salvini.
A Macerata c'è stato un raid razzista.
11 aggressioni a sfondo razzista nel giro di poco meno di 2 mesi.
Perché è una vergogna il modo con il quale Salvini ha costruito un racconto che ha reso gli italiani un paese più razzista negli ultimi mesi.
Che cosa ha fatto Matteo Salvini? Ha creato paura, ha creato caos.
Luca Morisi generated publicity for his candidate. Good or bad, it scarcely matters, as long as people vote for the Italian orator.
I saw Luca Morisi as a visionary, and in fact, now he's probably thinking of something more advanced that I don't understand, but will understand in time. That's why I work with him.
Matteo Salvini and his discreet Machiavelli openly tamed the social networks. Elsewhere, at the very summit of the state, a shadow cabinet is hard at work. A quasi-mafia-like clan, organized like a pyramid, and which is not ashamed to threaten its own citizens.
Throughout, last year, I got all kinds of threats like, right now, if you're living in the US, don't come back ever. I became a target for them.
This young teacher from Sao Paulo has been investigating digital disinformation for 4 years. In Brazil, this is a dangerous game. For his investigation, David Nemer plunged into the intricacies of WhatsApp messaging. This is the playground of the Brazilian engineers of chaos.
WhatsApp is instrumental to communication in Brazil. And because of its encryption feature, then it becomes, an easier platform to hide and spread misinformation.
In Brazil, WhatsApp has 130 million users, which is close to 2 out of every 3 Brazilians. Family, leisure, and friend groups where everyone trusts each other. A bit like you and your own WhatsApp community. But what if someone with bad intentions were to infiltrate this inner circle and spread fake news? That's what happened to millions of Brazilians during the 2018 presidential campaign.
Bolsonaro was a new person in the election. People wanted to know more about him.
Reserve Captain Jair Bolsonaro, at the time almost an unknown in national terms, began to climb in the polls. To disseminate his propaganda, he chose to secretly infiltrate the Brazilians' favorite messaging service.
In my own WhatsApp groups with my family, with my uncles, aunts, mom, I noticed that they were sharing content that were basically fake news.
Fake news to stir up trouble among voters. Like this video, one of the most shared on WhatsApp.
This is what is handed out at your child's nursery under the pretext of fighting homophobia. You gotta vote Bolsonaro, guys.
I wanted to know where those contents were coming from. So I joined 4 WhatsApp groups that label themselves as pro-Bolsonaro. And I found out that the human infrastructure is basically organized like a pyramid. At the base of this pyramid, you have the average Brazilians. On the second level, there was the Bolso army, or the army that worked to get Bolsonaro's word across. They were working to actually get the misinformation from those groups to the groups where my parents, my uncles, my aunts belonged. And at the very top of the pyramid, that were the influencers. I call them the influencers because they were the ones bringing unique and new misinformation to those groups.
David Nemer's investigation reveals above all that the engineers of chaos at the top of the pyramid belong to the Brazilian president's close inner circle.
In 2018, Bolsonaro's sons, Flávio Bolsonaro and Eduardo Bolsonaro, they published their phone numbers on their own social media account. And when I saved those numbers in the phone that I monitor those WhatsApp groups, I realized that these numbers were in those groups. Not only they were in those groups, they were also the admins, like the managers of these groups. That they knew what was going on, and they knew that misinformation was happening.
Not only did the Bolsonaro boys know the score, they also conducted the orchestra. The Brazilian press gave this personal bodyguard a name, the Cabinet of Hate, run by Jair Bolsonaro's 3 sons. Carlos, aka Pitbull, yearns for the days of the military dictatorship. Eduardo, the youngest, worships firearms, and Steve Bannon, the populist advisor who helped Trump become president. And Flavio, the eldest, suspected of links with the criminal world. The whole country discovered their methods from the headlines several days before the presidential elections.
The WhatsApp messaging app said it's investigating the companies denounced yesterday by the São Paulo newspaper Folha.
Jair Bolsonaro's campaign attempted to influence the election through millions of fake news articles about the Workers' Party sent through WhatsApp.
The Bolsonaro clan's modus operandi was revealed by Patricia Campos. This seasoned journalist showed how the candidate's team sent millions of political messages to voters using automated software.
The first story I did was actually that they were doing during the campaign something that they got businessmen to bundle money from donors. And lots of businessmen were buying from marketing agencies packages of mass messaging, bulk messaging, WhatsApp, against the Workers' Party and against the then candidate Fernando Haddad.
The cabinet of hate could not stand the press revealing its election rigging. Reprisals against the journalist were devastating.
Eduardo Bolsonaro tweeted that I offered sex to get information against Bolsonaro. All the right-wing bloggers started tweeting, putting on Facebook. In, I don't know, like hours, in a few hours, they had all kinds of memes with porn pictures, like women naked and a montage with my face on it.
That's when these WhatsApp groups exploded and started making misogynist, sexist content to attack Patricia.
I was getting this from WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. By the time we published, like all the fact-checking, right? Audios, messages, pictures, it was useless. Now, when I'm about to publish a story, I pause. I'm not saying I don't publish, but I pause. Because who are they going to go after? Is it going to be my son this time? Or are they going to be, you know... I myself, I pause before I publish. I mean, I think a lot.
This cabinet of hate is now at the center of a parliamentary inquiry launched by the opposition.
Eu rodei esse Brasil fazendo campanha.
I traveled the length of Brazil campaigning for a man named Jair Messias Bolsonaro. I don't know if the president is aware of the extent of the madness churned out by this office of hatred.
Que esse gabinete do ódio.
Joyce Hasselman knows the cabinet of hate very well. Once an ally of Bolsonaro, this MP is now his target for publicly accusing Eduardo and Carlos, the president's two sons.
I was a victim of the cabinet of hate because I told Bolsonaro, no, I didn't want to defend his son. He didn't want us to investigate him for the theft of public funds and corruption. From then on, attacks have rained down on me and my family.
Eles tinham até calendário.
They even had a calendar on which they'd schedule who the whole group would attack, from this date to that date.
De que dia a que dia? Por exemplo,
for example, we're going to attack Joyce, and the hashtag will be Peppa Pig.
With women, it's always more aggressive And it's always like, you're ugly, you're old, you're fat, your husband does that, your father does that, or you offer sex.
Você pode, eventualmente, processar.
You can sue someone for slander, name-calling, or libel, but that's just one or two people. But how do you react to fake news shared by 50 million people, 100 million people? It's impossible.
You have the social media accounts of Bolsonaro, his sons, they have millions of followers. Then you have this ecosystem of right-wing bloggers and influencers. The hate cabinet, they all amplify these right-wing bloggers who have millions of followers. This is all an ecosystem.
An ecosystem that the Bolsonaro clan cultivates methodically. On Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, the president recommends his favorite influencers to his millions of followers. Among them, that of Bernardo Custer, who has close to 1 million YouTube subscribers. Both Catholic reactionary and seasoned influencer.
When I use Facebook, I used more for long texts and intellectual thoughts or ideas or something else. Twitter, I think it's a hot social media. It's where the blood spits, so to speak, because it's violent and it's very fast and it's, I think it's thrilling. This is democracy, yeah.
Behind his affable air, his thinking is conspiratorial, his manner muscular.
Feminist my foot. What are you fighting for? To legalize abortion? To murder children in their mother's belly? Be careful with Disney because they're explicitly pro-LGBT and pro-gender ideology. So, Mrs. Joyce Hasselman, you shit on the government. Sorry, but you've left a pile of shit. A pile of bullshit.
Courts have convicted the YouTuber on 2 counts of defamation. Facebook and Twitter closed his accounts. YouTube has removed ads from his channel. But Bernardo Custer accepts the consequences. Anything divisive advances his cause.
When you're treating like Joyce as a man of pipa, like a pig.
Yeah.
Treating a woman as a pig is something for you that is relevant.
Yeah, but she was, at the time, she was above weight, she's white, and she was similar to that. I don't know. We are being, I think we are a whining society. We're too whiny. So I'm sorry, we are being weak. We would say that now Brazil is polarized. But I think this is very good because if you see Bolsonaro, he has a hard speech. He said things that shocked people and he was elected.
The chaos engineers have imposed their alternative facts in the parallel world of social networks. A far more effective strategy now that traditional media has lost a lot of ground.
Social media began to transform our entire communication landscape, but it did another thing. It put local newspapers out of business in many areas because they couldn't compete with what was happening on social media.
Over 15 years, the digital wave has buried no fewer than 1,800 local newspapers in the United States. It was small-town America that was hit hard. A disaster that the populists exploit to deceive the citizens.
And
And welcome back to the Tennessee Star Report. Michael Patrick Leahy here. It is 6:17 a.m., broadcasting live from our studios on Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, look, the trucking companies have really kept
Michael Patrick is a diehard Republican. He belongs to this vague, ultra-conservative grouping that wants to inform Middle America in his own way. An apparently local strategy which masks a clearly national objective.
Oh, great. When we come back, it's football. And we'll be back after this.
We're on a mission to report the truth from a conservative worldview. Yeah. A mission. Like a patriotic mission. How about that?
And our special guest this morning, representing what? District number 6, Fran Bush. Now, Fran.
In fact, Michael Patrick carries out his mission underground, via internet. He owns 5 apparently deceptive news sites. No mention of his militant Trumpism, and to attract readers, he passes his sites off as genuine local media. The Tennessee Star, the Michigan Star, the Virginia Star, the Ohio Star, and the Minnesota Sun. But strangely, all the headlines are alike. From the Michigan Star to the Minnesota Sun, the same articles. For example, in this October 2020 edition, Donald Trump, still president, makes the headline on every site. Trump with the First Lady, Trump and the polls, Trump and immigration. Local news is almost non-existent. The deception goes much further, as far as publishing fake news, such as this surprising announcement in the midst of the COVID pandemic.
The CDC report indicates masks may increase chance of infection with COVID or other respiratory illnesses.
In the report by this official body, this conclusion never appears. It even reminds you that you must wear a mask. On social media, 60% of those who share articles only read the title. But for Michael Patrick, it doesn't matter if the title is fake, only the ideology matters.
Right. So your objection is to the title?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that headline, we're totally fine with that headline.
Your title is just the opposite. CDC reports indicate masks may increase chance of infection with COVID.
Well, we just have a different view on that.
But we cannot have different opinion on facts. It's
the interpretation of the fact in the headline.
One tactic that works really well for propagators of mis and disinformation is to gaslight, to say what you're seeing is not the truth, or that there could be 2 possible truths to a situation.
The tactic is effective and is becoming contagious. In the opposite camp, some attempted to imitate their opponents. Tara McGowan is a controversial Democrat tactician, even within her own camp. She manages a budget of $100 million raised from influential donors. With this money, she too has launched her own local pro-Democrat news group. For example, in Arizona and Michigan. Unlike Michael Patrick, here, fact-checkers have never found any fake news. But like him, she deceives internet users with her partisan articles.
Our intention is not to be balanced. That is not our intention. We are a progressive news organization, and we can't rely on the mainstream media to elevate truth over lies, because they, out of a defensive posture from being called liberal by the right, they practice both sidesism, and they'll elevate a Republican's lie as equal to a fact that a Democrat might say. I agree that partisan media is probably not going to restore trust fully. And yet, if one side is doing it, the other side just shouldn't do it because they disagree, and then they lose the information war. I would rather win the information war than a moral purity test, is what I mean.
The problem is, okay, so we live in two different realities. What are we going to do at a stoplight if we all disagree on what a red light means? If we can't agree on basic facts, it is going to be really hard to have a civilized society, and certainly one that is built on mutual understanding and trust.
In a post-truth world, facts fade when faced down by opinions. Today, the whole of America is displaying its divisions.
I used to have a number of Democrat friends, but I don't have any now.
Scott McKenzie has become hooked on Trump, on Twitter, on conspiracy theories swept along by internet. This new vision of the world has isolated him from his family.
I haven't been able to talk with my kids for about a year, maybe a year and a half, because of the division, the ideological division between us. What's really in charge of this world is a satanic cult, a very well-financed satanic cult. And Obama and Clinton and Bush and all these people were part of it. The 4 years of Trump, the Make America Great Again movement, was also part of a broader effort called the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening exposes the pedophile rings, the human trafficking, the communist takeover of the United States and other nations. The Great Awakening, I heard through Twitter. I spent a lot of time on Twitter, sometimes 10 hours in a day, yeah.
Everyone in their own bubble, everyone at home. Millions of Trump supporters await the Great Awakening. On social networks, conspiracy theories abound. They're the matrices of digital populism. Populism that a young 32-year-old geek helped bring to life.
Yes. I want to ask you about your experience working with Steve Bannon, one of President Trump's senior campaign advisors.
Christopher Wiley, an engineer of chaos despite himself. He's the whistleblower who was behind the global Cambridge Analytica scandal, named after his employer. Christopher Wiley revealed how Donald Trump's camp targeted tens of millions of Americans via internet to radicalize them.
And propaganda.
My role was to identify people who were more prone to conspiratorial thinking and invite them to join, oftentimes, Facebook groups. If you imagine for a second that you are a random guy somewhere in the United States, and you see an ads or recommended group, and you click on it. And, you know, these groups would have sort of these, like, very ambiguous names, you know, Smith County Patriots, right? So it's like, okay, and you live in Smith County. It all feels organic. It all feels random. But you've been selected for this group because your data profile suggests to Cambridge Analytica's algorithm that you're probably more prone to conspiratorial thinking, you're probably more neurotic. And it was about building and catalyzing the genesis of a movement that has now become, you know, a huge political movement in the United States, and even, you know, helps facilitate the ascendancy of Donald Trump into the presidency.
I did my best with my children to open their eyes to what was really going on. I sent them videos, I sent them news stories, asked them to read them. I provided my own analysis in the same manner as I was doing on Twitter. And eventually they called me up and asked me to stop sending them this stuff. It boils down to, and this is my summation, is that they think I'm the one that's been brainwashed, that I'm the crazy person, that I'm the radical. Until their eyes are open, we probably are not going to be speaking a lot with each other.
100-day suspension.
But as far as my day-to-day world, I have my community on Twitter, and these are people that agree with me ideologically. And when I communicate with them on Twitter now, it's almost like I'm sitting next to them in the same room.
Since then, like Donald Trump, Scott is no longer on Twitter. The platform has banned them both, for good. In Brazil, the Bolsonaro clan is still as active on social networks. And the engineers of chaos are perfecting a remarkable weapon: large-scale digital data theft. It's a job for data miners. They hoover up private information on the internet on behalf of unscrupulous politicians. These pirates have clients as far away as Europe, and the wherewithal to distort the game of democracy, including where you live.
Obrigado.
Bruno Maia is fighting to denounce these practices in Brazil. This human rights activist wants to gather as much information on these pirates as possible.
Here we go.
Over the phone, he poses as a candidate in the local elections who wants to anonymously send out political propaganda to voters. At the other end of the line, a data extractor.
Hello, I'd like to know if it's possible to carry out an influence operation in the town of Fortaleza now. Because on Sunday, we need something real quick.
There's an election. You want to send it to the whole of Fortaleza?
Yes, or a good part of the town.
You have to tell me which population to target if you want something specific.
If, for example, I want to target a neighborhood and men over 40, can you do that?
No problem.
Selling a turnkey database of personal data for an election is totally illegal.
There have always been rumors during elections, but now it's become a factory. It's as if rumors and lies have been industrialized. They're making money by weakening democracy. In my opinion, these people are dangerous.
We wanted to find out how these data hunters seem to operate with impunity. To approach them, we created a fake political party, Women for France, a very conservative, anti-abortion, right-wing party. We filmed with a hidden camera in a high street agency. We claim to want to target French anti-abortion voters in the Paris region. Thanks to his software, the IT specialist will be able to locate them on any social network.
For example, I type abortion. I can extract the full name, phone number, email, date of birth. You see, we're already at 1,000 new posts that use the word abortion.
In a few minutes, the man siphons from his Brazilian office the digital data of all French internet users who have posted the word abortion within a given area. GPS coordinates that enable you to track the name, email, the telephone number. This information collection violates all rules for the protection of personal data. And can you search on LGBT criteria?
Yes, that's very easy. Our system works better on Facebook and Instagram because WhatsApp is still highly protected. Instagram and Facebook regularly put obstacles in our way to stop us doing what we do. The software stops working 2 or 3 times a week. We have to rewrite the software. We're constantly adapting it.
They're efficient. They recovered an incredible number of pages without being detected in no time at all. On the other hand, the social networks, Facebook, Instagram, and the rest, know that there are companies data mining. It's hard to combat. It's a cat and mouse game. There's a whole industry behind them, the data industry.
Can you guarantee that after payment, we won't be detected? There's no danger.
Everything is done from abroad. Nothing is done locally. We'll be paid in bitcoins. Nothing will link you to us.
Elsewhere, several hours later, another consultant comes to visit us.
Hola, buen día.
Says he's already worked with Italian and Spanish clients. His catalogue of services contains a formidable tool. It's called an IMSI catcher, a kind of relay antenna hidden in a small backpack.
I brought an antenna. I have 80 antennas scattered throughout the state of Sao Paulo. Talking by phone worries me because it's forbidden here, but I do it anyway.
This antenna is outlawed in Brazil as it is in Europe, for good reason. It's reserved for counter-espionage services. It discreetly sucks up all the mobile numbers around it.
If we leave this at the airport, it'll record the phone numbers of everybody checking in. I tried it out at Malpensa Airport. In a week, I got over 3 million phone numbers. You can be sure that by 2022, everyone will have this.
It's extremely worrying. I knew about IMSI catcher, but had no notion of its use in a political context. It's highly dangerous. If tomorrow I go to an anti-abortion demonstration and join the crowd incognito with a backpack, I can get all the phone numbers around me. That's highly specific data about you. I know you're against abortion. I can retrieve additional data and thus target you and profile you precisely.
I'm gay, so I'm worried. Today in Brazil, the federal government is hostile to the LGBT cause. If Bolsonarism continues to grow, then they will simply be able to locate LGBT people and persecute them.
From inciting violence online to violence in real life is but a short step, as Bruno knows. January 6, 2021. Trump fanatics attempt an unlikely coup in Washington, whipped up by the ex-president on social networks. Yesterday, digital platforms embodied the hope of liberating peoples. Today, they're accused of playing into the hands of the populists. Casualty count: 5 dead. A country more divided than ever. And several days later, an unprecedented decision. One after the other, the platforms banned the President of the United States. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
Gentlemen, my time is short, and I ask...
US parliamentarians blame the platforms themselves of being agents of chaos. In the dock, the social network giants and their presidents. Mark Zuckerberg for Facebook, Sundar Pichai, Google, and Jack Dorsey, Twitter.
I want to start by asking all three of you if your platform bears some responsibility for disseminating disinformation related to the election and the Stop the Steal movement that led to the attack on the Capitol. Just a yes or no answer. Mr. Zuckerberg.
Chairman, I think our responsibility is to build systems that can help.
Mr. Zuckerberg, I just want a yes or no answer, okay? Yes or no, do you bear some responsibility for what happened?
Congressman, our responsibility is to make sure that we build effective systems to help
Okay, the
fight this
gentleman
prejudice.
chooses not to answer the question. Mr. Pichai, yes or no?
We always feel a deep sense of responsibility, but I think we worked hard. This election effort was one of our most substantive efforts.
Is that a yes or a no?
Congressman, it's a complex question.
Okay, we'll move on. Mr. Dorsey.
Yes, but you also have to take into consideration a broader ecosystem. It's not just about the technology platforms we use.
Mr. Zuckerberg.
Imagine if you had any other sector use the argument of Silicon Valley. Yes, there's problems, but we're trying. Yes, our drugs poison people, but we're trying. Yes, our airplanes fall out of the sky, but we're trying. Yes, our cars explode, but we're trying. And so my question is, well, why should you be able to still make money if you haven't proven that your algorithms are safe?
We have never figured out, is that what we want for our information ecosystem? Where facts don't matter anymore, where the loudest voices win, where we can be pushed more and more into our own sort of echo chambers. And I'm not saying that that is happening to every single person on social media. That's not what I'm saying. But it doesn't have to happen to everybody. Social media has taken enough people down those paths that it affects all of us now.
Now that Twitter has suspended my account, yeah, I do feel sort of isolated. I don't think it's going to go on for very much longer, because now that Trump is in the private world, he will create a media dynasty, and it will be truthful, and it will be free. And once that happens, I don't think there's anything anybody can do to stop the unity of the world and the great awakening of the world, because it's a global great awakening.